The scream didn't sound like anything Mark Delaney had heard in Afghanistan. It was sharper, closer, human in a way that cut straight through the years. Help somebody. Please. Gunshots cracked in the concrete echo chamber of the hospital parking garage. 1, 2, 3. Then the ugly metallic sound of a magazine slamming home. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, painting everything in a sick blue. Mark hugged the pillar, feeling the vibration of each shot in his ribs. He could smell burned powder and hot oil. 37 years old, 2 tours behind him, and his hands still shook the way they had the day his life was ruined on national television. "Don't move," a man shouted somewhere ahead. "Camera off or you're dead." Mark edged around the pillar just enough to see her. On the cement between 2 SUVs, a woman lay on her side, wrists bound with a zip tie, blood blooming through her blazer near the shoulder. A camera lay smashed beside her, its red recording light still blinking. Her face turned toward him, eyes wide, hair matted with rain and sweat. Dana Cole, the true crime TV host who had called him a disgrace to the uniform. The woman who had looked into the camera 7 years ago and said, "Men like Mark Delaney don't deserve a second chance." Her gaze locked on his now, not with contempt, but with absolute bone-deep fear. "Please," she mouthed. Mark drew a slow breath, feeling the weight of the service pistol he wasn't supposed to have on this job. The pulse pounding in his ears, and the memory of his 9-year-old son asking, "You're a good guy, right, Dad?" He could walk away. Or he could save the woman who had helped destroy his life. Before I go any further, tell me where you're listening from tonight, and hit that like and subscribe button if you believe courage still matters in this world. Mark Delaney's nights usually didn't look like this. Most nights, the only thing that broke the silence was the hum of vending machines and the occasional beeping cart rolling through the corridors of St. Anthony's Medical Center on the edge of Columbus, Ohio. He worked the graveyard shift as a hospital security guard, walking the same loops past the ER, the maternity ward, the quiet chapel with the flickering electric candles. It was steady work for a man who didn't get many second interviews once people Googled his name. Before the scandal, Mark had been a military police sergeant with the Marines. 10 years in. Clean record. The guy they tapped when a situation got messy overseas. Then a prison riot back at a stateside facility went sideways, an inmate died, and someone needed a face to blame. Enter Dana Cole and her prim, righteous TV show, Justice Watch. Her episode on the Butcher of Brenton facility had run 3 times in 1 month. Grainy footage, dramatic narration, and his mugshot on the screen while she talked about abuse of power and dangerous veterans. The case was complicated. The truth was messy. But TV wanted villains, not nuance. The prosecutors dropped the worst charges eventually, but the damage was done. His career gone, his name trashed. Friends stopped calling. Even his own father had looked at him differently. The only person who never flinched was his son, Evan. 9 years old, soccer-obsessed, always slipping his small hand into Mark's when they crossed the street. Evan believed the version of his dad, who fixed broken bike chains, who showed up to every school concert, who worked nights so he could be there for homework and pancakes. So Mark built a life around that. Cheap rental house on the east side. Second-hand furniture. Bills paid just in time. He kept his head down at the hospital, did his rounds, cracked quiet jokes with the nurses, and stepped in when drunks got loud in the ER. He didn't talk about the Marines. He didn't talk about Brenton. He sure as hell didn't talk about Dana Cole. Then on a Tuesday that started like any other, he saw her. He was standing at the visitor entrance, sipping burnt coffee from a paper cup when a black SUV pulled up under the awning. A makeup artist hopped out first, then a skinny guy with headphones and a boom mic, and then her. Dana stepped onto the sidewalk like she was arriving at a movie premiere, not a community hospital. Perfect hair, bright blazer, that same polished voice he remembered from every nightmare promo. She laughed at something her producer said, oblivious to the way Mark's grip tightened on his coffee until the lid buckled. He ducked his head, hoping she wouldn't recognize him. 7 years and 20 pounds later, he was just another tired guard in a navy jacket. She breezed past the metal detector, flashing a press badge. "What's the shoot?" Mark asked the receptionist, keeping his voice level. "Some fluff segment about hospital heroes," she answered. "Guess we're finally on TV for something good." Hospital heroes. Mark almost laughed. He watched Dana disappear down the hallway toward the pediatric wing cameras trailing her like satellites. The air felt colder somehow. All the careful distance he'd built from his past collapsed in a single, unwanted sighting. That should have been the worst thing that happened that night, but a storm was rolling in from the west, dark and heavy, and before the end of Mark's shift, he'd learned that someone else had followed Dana Cole to St. Anthony's. Someone who wasn't interested in fluff pieces at all. Rain hammered the roof of the parking garage like 1,000 frantic fingers. The storm had moved in faster than anyone expected, turning the night into a curtain of water and wind. By the time police sirens blared in the distance and headlights swept wildly across the concrete pillars, Mark Delaney already had Dana shielded behind a van waiting for the officers to secure the shooter. But it didn't go cleanly. Things never did for Mark. 2 officers swept in, found shell casings, broken glass, the smeared line of Dana's blood, and a whole lot of nothing else. The gunman was gone. Disappeared into the stairwell and out the southwest exit before backup ever arrived. The lieutenant on duty, a thick-necked man with too much attitude and too little patience, turned on Mark like he personally released the shooter. "You were the only armed man here," he said, jabbing a finger at Mark's chest. "You expect me to believe you didn't engage?" Mark kept his posture straight. "My weapon stayed holstered. My first priority was getting civilians safe." "Civilians?" The lieutenant barked a laugh. "She's a TV personality, Delaney. Not exactly a hostage negotiation." Dana, sitting on the curb with a medic wrapping her shoulder, looked up sharply. "That man tried to kill me." "Ma'am," the lieutenant said with thin politeness, "you said you were filming a piece on medical frontliners. Maybe this is some kind of misunderstanding." Dana opened her mouth to fight back, but Mark stepped forward just enough to draw attention away from her. "Lieutenant, the shooter fired 3 live rounds and reloaded." "That's not a misunderstanding." "Well, you would know about excessive force, wouldn't you?" The words landed like a slap. The medic's hands froze. Dana's eyes widened. Mark said nothing. He didn't clench his fists. He didn't bristle. He didn't bite back with the retort that burned at the back of his throat. He just inhaled slowly through his nose the way he'd been taught in anger management after the Brenton fallout. But the lieutenant wasn't done. "You need to check in with hospital administration before I clear your statement. Last thing we need is another incident." He didn't say the name of the prison. He didn't have to. Dana actually flinched as if the insult had been hurled at her instead. Mark just nodded. "Understood, sir." The lieutenant walked away, leaving the wet air thick with judgment. Dana tried to speak maybe an apology, maybe gratitude, he couldn't tell, but he held up a hand. "Let the medic finish. Then someone from the unit will take your statement." Her expression fractured regret, confusion, something close to shame, but Mark didn't stay to interpret it. He walked back toward the elevator, soaking wet, feeling the old weight settle on his shoulders like a familiar, unwanted coat. He had paint peeling off the walls at home that needed fixing, bills sitting on the kitchen table, and a little boy asleep upstairs waiting for his dad to come home in the morning. He didn't have room for old wounds. But the night wasn't finished with him yet. When he clocked out at 6 a.m., he found a message from the hospital's HR office. A mandatory meeting, urgent regarding last night's incident. He didn't need anyone to interpret that for him. Evan was pouring cereal when Mark came through the kitchen door. His son's mop of brown hair was sticking up in every direction. His soccer jersey hung crooked on his small frame, and his backpack was already slung over one shoulder. "Dad, you're late." "Storm slowed everything down," Mark said. He forced a smile, the kind that felt tight around the edges. "Ready for school, yep." And Coach said, if I score at Saturday's scrimmage, he might move me up to the midfield rotation. "That's great." Evan paused mid-bite, noticing something in his father's voice. Children have radar for emotional weather systems. Evan's radar was always tuned to his dad. "You okay?" Mark ruffled his hair. "Just tired." Evan didn't buy it, not completely. But he let it go. As they walked to the bus stop, the neighborhood waking slowly around them with barking dogs and porch lights flicking off, Mark felt the tension still coiled inside him. The way the lieutenant had looked at him like he was one breath away from turning violent. The way people still whispered, "That's him," when they pulled up his name online. Evan tugged his sleeve. "Dad." "Yeah, bud. Are you in trouble again?" Mark stopped walking. The ache that moved through him was sharp and cold. "Who told you that, Mrs. Jansen?" Evan said quietly. She said people who hurt other people don't get to carry guns anymore." Mark closed his eyes. Mrs. Jansen, the neighbor who always carried a Bible in one hand and gossip in the other. "Come here," he said, kneeling so they were eye level. "I never hurt anyone who didn't try to hurt someone else first, not once. You hear me?" Evan nodded, but the worry didn't leave his face. "And I am not in trouble," Mark added. "Some adults, they don't know the whole story, but you and me, we know the truth." A tiny smile tugged at Evan's lips. "Yeah, we do." The bus screeched up to the curb. Evan climbed aboard, turning back to wave before the doors folded shut. As it drove away, the knot in Mark's chest tightened. His worst fear wasn't losing his job or facing another round of public judgment. It was Evan growing up thinking his father was the monster someone once painted him to be. Hospital administration met him at 10 a.m. The conference room was over-air-conditioned, smelling faintly of lemon wipes and coffee burned hours ago. A woman in a burgundy blazer, someone from PR, sat stiffly at the end of the table. The head of security, a man Mark respected, sat beside her. PR woman slid a folder across the table. "We've received several calls from the news network that Ms. Cole works for. Her producer made allegations that you were acting aggressively." Mark blinked. "Aggressively, I shielded her until police arrived. That's not what we heard." She tapped the folder. "They've suggested she didn't feel safe with you." A laugh, short, humorless, escaped him. "She was tied up and bleeding. I was the one that untied her. We're not assigning blame," PR said. "But with your prior history, it may be better for the hospital if we review your status while the investigation proceeds." There it was. The axe. His supervisor leaned forward. "Mark, nobody's firing you, but they want you off active rounds until this blows over." Mark's jaw tightened. "How long?" "A week, maybe 2. A week without pay. Rent already late, Evan needing new cleats for soccer." He swallowed the bitterness before it escaped. "Understood." PR woman closed her folder satisfied. We hope you see this as a precaution for everyone's safety. He wanted to say everyone except mine. But he didn't. Mark thanked them and left the room with a steady gait that cost him effort he didn't have. In the hallway, he leaned against the cool wall, feeling the pressure build behind his eyes. His hands trembled again the way they did after the worst nights overseas. That's when he saw her, Dana Cole. Dressed differently now, no blazer, just a gray sweatshirt from the hospital gift shop, but unmistakable. She was standing outside the chaplain's office, looking as if the storm from last night had followed her inside. The moment she spotted him, something like guilt flashed across her face. Mark. He walked past her without slowing. "Please," she said, stepping forward. "I need to talk to you." "Don't," he said, not looking back. "But they said you were suspended," and his footsteps stopped. He turned. "And why do you think that is?" Dana's shoulders fell. "Because someone made a call, not me. Someone from your team," he said. "Someone who reports to you." She didn't deny it. Her silence was admission enough. "I didn't ask them to," she whispered. "I swear." "Doesn't matter," Mark said. "It cost me my job either way." A flash of real pain crossed her face. "Mark, what happened last night wasn't random. That man wasn't after you. He was after me. And I'm the one paying for it." Dana stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I think I've been followed for weeks. Someone from a case I covered years ago. I didn't know who else to tell. Tell the police," he said. "I did. They think I'm exaggerating. And what do you think I'm supposed to do?" Her answer came softly. "Believe me." Mark held her gaze for one long, agonizing moment. Then he walked away. But even as he did, even as he pushed open the glass door and stepped into the cold slap of late morning wind, he felt the sense that whatever he'd been dragged into was only beginning. Pressure building. Storm gathering. A gunman still out there. A reporter with shadows trailing her. And a 9-year-old boy trusting that his dad would always make the right call. The breaking point wasn't here yet, but it was coming. Fast. The day that everything snapped began quietly, too quietly. A stillness that didn't belong in a hospital pulsed through the hallways like held breath. The storm had passed overnight, leaving a strange, glassy brightness in its wake. But the calm didn't soothe Mark Delaney. It prickled at him, set the base of his neck tingling in that old familiar way, like a warning traveling up old scars. He wasn't on shift, HR had made sure of that, but Evan had forgotten his science project at home, and Mark figured dropping it off before school hours ended would keep his son from losing points. Anything for Evan. Always for Evan. But the moment he stepped into St. Anthony's lobby, a ripple moved through the security team posted at the front desk. A glance here. A repressed whisper there. The kind of reaction that used to follow him in grocery stores when his name trended on cable news for all the wrong reasons. Mark kept walking, eyes forward, shoulders squared. Just here to drop off a kid's shoebox volcano. Nothing more. He cut down the east hallway toward the school outreach office, passing the pediatric wing. The hall smelled faintly of antiseptic and powdered latex. A janitor's mop bucket squeaked somewhere behind him. Nothing remarkable, nothing threatening, nothing. Then he heard it. A sound he knew instantly, the way a firefighter knows the smell of smoke before anyone else does. The brittle pop of an electrical short, followed by a stutter, a flicker, and a distant alarm chirping once in warning. Mark froze, listening. A second pop. Then a high, keening buzz, like a transformer straining under sudden load. He turned instinctively toward the sound down the corridor, leading to the imaging suites. A place full of machines that didn't tolerate malfunctions well. A place where a cascading fault could go from inconvenient to catastrophic in seconds. And somewhere in that direction, he heard voices. Raised, panicked. Then sharp and clear, a woman's scream. His pulse spiked. The old instincts uncoiled inside him like muscle memory snapping awake. Mark broke into a sprint. He rounded the corner just as a blast of heat slapped him full in the face. A panel in the wall near the imaging control room had blown open flames licking out like the tongue of a furnace. The hallway's sprinkler system sputtered uselessly, coughing out a few drops and then going silent electrical failure. The fire alarm didn't trigger. Someone must have bypassed it. And in the middle of the rising smoke, he saw her. Dana Cole, pressed against the imaging room door, pounding on it with her good hand. "Help someone, please." They locked it. They locked it from outside. Inside the room, silhouettes moved 2 MRI techs and an elderly patient trapped behind thick glass. The panel leading to the automatic fire door was dead, no power. The door wouldn't open without a manual override. Mark didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, didn't think about HR suspensions, the lieutenant's sneer, or the neighbors whispering about him. All he saw was a fast-growing blaze, a jammed exit, and people about to die in a concrete hallway that would turn into an oven in under 5 minutes. "Back up," he shouted. Dana stumbled away as Mark ripped off his jacket and wrapped it around his hand. Flames licked out again, curling at the ceiling tiles, casting jagged shadows across the walls. The imaging door had a manual release panel behind a metal plate. A simple thing, if you had the tools and the knowledge. Mark had both. He pulled a folding screwdriver from his back pocket habit from years of maintenance work and jammed it under the edge of the panel. The metal bent with a shriek. Smoke rolled over him, hot enough to sear his sinuses. Dana coughed behind him. "Mark, it's spreading, I know." He didn't look back. Didn't need to. The logic board behind the panel was melted, blackened. But the override system was mechanical, not electronic. A simple pull rod and locking solenoid. He could work with that. He ripped the housing off, exposing the guts of the lock. Metal nearly too hot to hold. Behind the glass, the elderly patient was gasping, her hand slapping weakly against the window. Mark reached in, found the release rod, and yanked hard. Something snapped, then clicked. The door budged. Not much, 1/2 inch. He threw his weight into it, muscles straining, tendons burning. Another click. Then the door swung open an arm's width. "Move!" Mark reached for the tech first. Young shaking, coughing violently. He shoved him toward Dana. "Take him outside." She obeyed instantly, wrapping an arm around the tech's waist and helping him stagger down the hall. Mark grabbed the elderly patient next, lifting her with both arms. She was light, terrifyingly light, and wheezing through each shallow breath. The ceiling tiles above them caught fire. Ash drifted downward like dark snow. Mark carried the patient through the widening smoke tunnel, feeling heat press in on all sides. He reached Dana halfway down the hall, passing the woman into her arms. "Get her to triage," he said. "Go." Dana didn't argue. She dragged the patient away, shouting for help as she disappeared into the haze. Mark could have followed. He should have followed. But there was one more person inside. The second MRI tech was slumped on the floor, half-conscious. And the blaze was accelerating, racing across the acoustic panels, reaching for oxygen in a hungry roar. Mark plunged back into the imaging room. The air felt thicker now, tighter. His lungs protested immediately. He crouched low, dragging the tech out by the collar. Once in the hallway, he hoisted the man up with an arm across his shoulder. Halfway to safety, a beam overhead groaned, then snapped. Mark looked up just as a mass of flaming debris dropped toward him. He pushed the tech forward, throwing his own body sideways. The burning beam slammed into the floor, inches from his legs, sending out sparks like a meteor. Pain exploded across his shoulder, where a burning panel brushed him. He hissed, teeth clenched hard, but he kept his grip on the tech and shoved onward. A shape burst through the smoke ahead, Dana back again, sprinting toward them with a fire blanket in both hands. Mark. She threw the blanket over his head and yanked it tight around his shoulders as the tech collapsed into her. Together they dragged him down the hall and toward the emergency stairwell. The second they crossed the threshold, cool oxygen hit Mark's lungs like a fist. He coughed violently, vision blurring at the edges. Dana steadied him. "You burned your shoulder. I've had worse," he rasped. "Is everyone out?" Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. "Because of you, yes." Voices thundered down the stairwell as firefighters pushed past them with hoses, axes, and heavy gear. But the ones who saw Mark, the soot streaking his face, the melted fabric across his shoulder, the half-conscious tech clinging to Dana, they stopped. Just for a breath. Just long enough to understand what he'd done. One of the firefighters, a captain Mark recognized from ER rounds, touched his arm. "You pulled them out." Mark nodded, too exhausted to speak. The captain let out a low whistle. "Hell of a thing, Delaney." Dana stared at him like she was seeing him for the first time, not as the disgraced headline, not as the shadow of her own mistakes, but as the man who had run into fire without hesitation. It wasn't admiration in her eyes. It was something deeper. Recognition. Half the security staff gathered at the landing, stunned, some whispering his name, others exchanging looks that said everything their mouths didn't dare. Mark leaned against the wall, breathing slowly, letting the pain settle into something manageable. He watched the smoke billow out of the imaging corridor and felt a cold certainty spreading through him. This hadn't been an accident. Not with the alarms bypassed, not with the power surge timed perfectly, not with Dana running to that wing minutes before the fire started. Someone had meant for her to be in that hallway. Someone had meant for no one else to get out. And now the entire hospital had just witnessed the lengths Mark would go to protect strangers, one of them being the woman who once helped tear his life apart. He straightened slowly, ignoring the burn across his shoulder. Dana stepped closer. "Mark," she whispered, voice trembling. "Whoever is after me, they're not going to stop. And after what you just did..." She didn't finish, because they both understood. The crisis wasn't over. It was escalating. And this time the danger wasn't just following her. It was watching him too. The smoke cleared slower than the fear did. Firefighters swarmed the imaging wing, hauling charred ceiling tiles and dragging hoses slick with runoff water. Nurses clustered in tight, whispering pockets. Techs sat on stretchers with oxygen masks pressed against trembling faces. The hall buzzed with adrenaline disbelief and something deeper, something that had everyone glancing toward the stairwell door where Mark Delaney leaned with one hand braced against the frame. He looked like he'd walked straight out of a war zone. Soot caked the side of his face, sweat streaked lines through it, and his shirt clung in ragged, melted patches around the burn across his shoulder. His breathing was steady, too steady for someone who'd just dragged 3 people out of a burning room. People noticed. A nurse whispered, "Did you see what he did?" Another murmured, "Security doesn't train for that. Where'd he learn it?" Even the firefighters gave him a second look when they passed respectful assessing. The way professionals recognize another professional. Dana stood 6 feet away, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. She couldn't stop watching him. Not with fear, not with shock, with something closer to reverence. "Mark saved my life," she said to anyone who approached her. "He saved everyone." Some nodded, some blinked in disbelief. Others seemed unwilling to reconcile the man they'd quietly judged for years with the man who had run into fire while they ran the other way. Then the lieutenant from the other night, thick-necked, smug, arrogant, marched through the doorway barking questions. Who tampered with the alarms? Why wasn't this reported sooner? And where the hell is that suspended guard? He stopped mid-sentence when he saw Mark. Full stop. Full silence. Because the whole hallway seemed to part for the man leaning on the frame, burned and exhausted, but standing straight, watching everything with the calm of someone who had stepped into hell and come back with 3 lives in his arms. The lieutenant cleared his throat. "Delaney," he said, voice a little too forced. "You assisted with evacuation fire?" Captain O'Neill stepped forward before Mark could answer. "Assisted." The captain barked a laugh. "Your man just breached a jammed door manually with no gear with flames overhead. He's the only reason we're not pulling bodies out." A murmur rolled through the room. Dana stepped closer. "He saved mine too." The lieutenant's jaw flexed. Guilt, embarrassment. Hard to tell. But he kept talking. "Be that as it may, he's currently on suspension and entering restricted areas. It was an emergency." Dana snapped the fire in her voice, matching the soot on her skin. "You think he should have waited outside and filled out a request form while people burned?" Someone in the crowd muttered, "She's right." Another said, "Give the man a break." The tide was turning, and everyone felt it. Yet Mark just stood there, not basking in it, not shrinking from it, just steady, watching, breathing, the quiet in his bones louder than all the chatter around him. And then from behind the cluster of firefighters, a voice said quietly, "He wasn't just a guard. Not with moves like that." Everyone turned. The voice came from one of the rescued MRI techs sitting on a stretcher, an oxygen tube under his nose. He stared at Mark with something close to awe. "I've seen guys move like that before," the tech said. "My brother served with Marines in Helmand Province. Said they could track a fire, read a room, pull someone out blindfolded if they had to." A hush fell. "You're not just security, are you?" someone asked. Dana looked at Mark slowly, as if she was piecing together a puzzle she should have seen years ago. He exhaled, long, heavy, inevitable. "No," he said. "I'm not." The hallway held its breath. Then he said the thing he'd avoided saying for 7 years. "I was military police. Special reaction team. Before the Brenton riot." Silence. Not empty silence, charged silence. The kind people hold when something enormous has just shifted. The lieutenant stared. "Delaney. That Brenton. The one with the yes mark," said quietly. "The one that ruined my life." Dana looked like she'd been hit. Her lips parted, breath-catching. Because she knew. She knew exactly what he meant. She knew the case. The narratives. The headlines. The episode. The documentary she'd hosted back then, the one that leaned on questionable footage, the one that painted him as the aggressor. The one that contributed to half the country believing Mark Delaney was a violent disgrace. Her face drained of color. "Mark," she whispered. "I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know you were—" He cut her off gently. "Doesn't matter now." But she shook her head, eyes filling with regret. "It does matter. I got it wrong. I got you wrong. I trusted bad sources. I let people feed me a narrative, and I didn't push hard enough." Her voice broke. I helped destroy a good man's life. Not loud, not dramatic, but the most honest thing she'd ever said. Mark looked away, jaw working. The lieutenant who had mocked him questioned him, suspended him unofficially, shifted uneasily. Then did something that nearly no one expected. He stepped forward. "Delaney," he said, voice stiff but genuine. "I owe you an apology." Mark blinked. "I didn't know," the lieutenant continued. "I didn't understand. And I judged you off the wrong things." He exhaled. "That's on me." Some of the nurses nodded. So did a few security guards. The quiet swell of shame moving through the room was almost audible. "Fire." Captain O'Neill clapped Mark lightly on the uninjured shoulder. "You ever get tired of hospital security?" he said. "You come see me. We could use someone who runs toward flames instead of away from them." Another shift. A new axis. Dana's voice came softly. "There's more you don't know. About what happened at Brenton. About the man who contacted me last month. About the threats. About why someone is hunting me now." Mark's gaze locked onto hers. "Start talking." Before she could respond, a security officer jogged up, breathless. "We found something in the imaging wing," he said. "Fuse box was manually sabotaged. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't an accident." Another blow. The lieutenant swore under his breath. "So we're looking at attempted murder," Dana whispered. "This is my fault. Whoever's after me, they did this to get to me." Maybe Mark said, "But they did it in a building full of people. That makes them my problem too." Dana stared at him like he'd just flipped her entire universe upside down. A doctor approached them, clearing her throat. "We need to move patients from the West Wing while we investigate structural damage. Delaney, can you help us coordinate with the responders?" The lieutenant opened his mouth, probably to object, but then shut it again. Everyone could see the shift. They weren't looking to the ranking officer. They were looking to Mark. The man who had earned the right to lead without a badge, a title, or permission. He nodded. "Yeah. Tell me where you need me." Dana stepped closer, voice low. "There's something else you should see, but not here, not with everyone listening." "What is it?" he asked. "It's about Brenton," she whispered, "and about why someone tried to burn me alive." His heart kicked hard against his ribs. A firefighter leaned out of the imaging hallway. "Delaney, if you're helping with evac, we need you now." Mark nodded, but his eyes stayed on Dana. "We're not done," he said. "No," she answered quietly. "We're not." And there it was, the next step. A truth waiting outside the flames. A revelation that would force him to choose what kind of man he truly was, one who walked away from the life that hurt him, or one who stepped back into the fire for a reason bigger than himself. As he turned to help the responders, Dana watched him with a look that wasn't pity, wasn't fear, wasn't obligation. It was recognition, and something like faith. Because now everyone knew Mark Delaney wasn't just a disgraced guard. He wasn't the villain in an old documentary. He wasn't the cautionary tale people whispered about. He was the man who ran into fire when alarms failed. The man who saved lives when systems broke. The man with a past darker and more complicated than anyone realized. And the danger stalking Dana Cole. It had just made an enemy of him, which meant the real battle was only beginning. The hospital never returned to its old rhythm after the fire. Not in the hours that followed, not in the days after. Something had shifted quietly but unmistakably. Staff who once walked past Mark Delaney without a glance were now stopping him in the halls, offering handshakes, thanks even awkward apologies. Fire Captain O'Neill put in a formal commendation. The head of security asked him to return to active status immediately. Suspension lifted with an almost sheepish explanation about administrative miscommunication. and the lieutenant, the same one who had sneered at him only days earlier, sought him out in the cafeteria. He didn't puff up his chest, didn't come in with excuses. He simply stood across the table, eyes lowered. "You deserved better from me," he said quietly. "From a lot of us." Mark nodded once. There were no dramatic speeches, no emotional breakdowns, just a quiet exchange between two men who finally saw each other clearly. But the biggest change came with Dana. She met him outside the hospital late that night, wind tugging strands of hair across her bandaged shoulder. "I need to tell you everything," she said. They sat on a bench under the glow of the parking lot lights, the same place where the gunman had fired at her days earlier, and she laid it all out. The false leads. The pressure her producers had put on her during the Brenton episode. The man who had recently contacted her, threatening her to keep digging into a story she now wished she'd never touched. And then she placed a folder on his lap, documents she'd uncovered since the day the riot video first appeared. Internal memos. Statements buried by people with more power than conscience. An independent review from years earlier that had never seen daylight. All showing things Mark had never known. It turned out he hadn't failed at Brenton. He'd been set up to take the fall. She looked at him with tears she didn't bother hiding. "I can help fix this now," she said. "If you'll let me." Mark didn't answer right away. He watched the ambulances pull in and out of the bay across the lot, their lights reflected in wet asphalt. He thought about Evan upstairs, asleep in the pediatric overnight room after a late checkup, trusting that his dad was exactly the man he hoped him to be. Finally, he nodded. "Let's do it right this time." Dana exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. Together then. 6 months later, St. Anthony's had a new security training program written by Mark, taught by him twice a week, and attended by everyone from new guards to resident physicians. They called it situational integrity training, but the nurses jokingly called it the Delaney class. The hospital board offered him the role of Director of Emergency Response Preparedness, a position no one had held before, because no one had ever demanded it. He took it with quiet pride, and with a schedule that still allowed him to be at Evan's soccer practices and Friday night pizza outings. Evan walked taller now, too proudly wearing the school t-shirt that read, "My dad saved lives." He'd tell anyone who asked, "My dad's the bravest guy I know." And for the first time in a long time, Mark didn't feel the need to correct him. As for Dana, her new documentary didn't break ratings records, but it shook the right corners of the world. It exposed what really happened at Brenton. Not the dramatized version with ominous background music, the true version. The one that cleared the names of the men who'd followed orders, the ones who'd been abandoned by a system too terrified to blame the right people. Her final segment was about accountability. Her second-to-last segment was about Mark. He didn't love the attention, but he understood the importance. And when people reached out, old colleagues, former commanders, even strangers, he accepted their words with the kind of grace he didn't know he had in him years earlier. Because the truth had finally come into the light. Because the story had finally been rewritten. Because forgiveness had begun to take root on both sides. One crisp Saturday morning, nearly a year after the fire, Mark found himself standing on a riverbank north of the city. Dana and Evan sat nearby, roasting marshmallows over a small camping fire. Birds wheeled over the water. A fishing line tugged gently in the current. Life wasn't perfect, it never would be. But it was honest now. Steady. Dana looked over at him. "You ever think you'd have all this again?" He watched the reflection of the fire dancing in the water and shook his head. "Didn't think I deserved it for a long time." And now he considered that. Really considered it. Now he said softly, "I think some things survive fire, even when you don't expect them to." Dana smiled, not the polished broadcaster smile, but something warm and human and earned. Evan ran up with sticky fingers and a grin that made Mark feel like the world still held more good than bad. "Dad, can I stay up till the stars come out?" "Yeah," Mark said, ruffling his hair. "Tonight you can." The fire crackled. The river hummed. And the past, heavy as it had been, felt finally laid to rest. Because sometimes the world breaks good people. Sometimes it buries them under lies, fear, and the weight of other people's mistakes. But when truth finally finds air, when courage meets the right moment, when a man walks back through the flames instead of away from them, it has a way of lighting the path forward.